Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom, welcome back to today's Daf Yomi, which is YOMA Daf Yud. We begin on the top of the Amid, and the Gemara is in the middle of explaining for us why was it that the first Beis Hamikdash had a greater level of Shechina than the second Beis Hamikdash. And their answer is because the pasuk says Yafta lekim leyefes v'yishkoin be'olei Shem. Noach had 3 sons, Shem, Cham, v'Yefes, and Yefes was granted the privilege of being involved, assisting and initiating the building of the second Beis Hamikdash. Says the Gemara on the top line, Afal Gav, the Yafta lekim leyefes, even though Hashem granted Yofi, beauty, to Yefes, allowing them to initiate the building of the second Beis Hamikdash. Koresh, the king of Paras, he was the one who granted permission for them to build the second Beis Hamikdash. He was involved in initiating the building. But still, the true Shechina, the highest level, was only present back in the first Beis Hamikdash. Eina Shechina Sheira, Ela Beholei Shem. The true level of Shechina, the highest level, was only Beholei Shem, the tents of Shem, meaning the first Beis Hamikdash which was built by Shlomo HaMelech, a descendant of Shem. Continues the Gemara, Parsoi Menolon de Meyefes Ka'asu. So the second Beis Hamikdash was initiated by the Persians from Paras. What do we find? That they come from Yefes. The pasuk will give us a list of all Yefes' children. Bnei Yefes, Goymer, Mogeg, Umodai, V'Yovan, V'Suval, Meshach, V'Tiras. The Gemara will go through all the names. Goymer, which nation is that? Zeger Marmia. What is Mogeg? Zekandia. Modai, that's Zu Macedonia. Yovan is Kimashmoy, exactly what it is. Yovan is Greece. Tuval is referring to Beis Nike, some other nation. Meshech, Zu Musya. Tiras, what is that? Pligiba, Rabbi Simoy, Rabban. There's a machlekes between the two, how to interpret Tiras and which nation and which location is referring to. Va'amilo, some say the machlekes was between Rabbi Simoy and Rabban. Chad Amar, one said Zu Beis Tiraiki, it's referring to that area. V'chad Amar Zu Paras. So according to the Shita, Paras, Persia, they're descendants of Yefes. In fact, Tani Rav Yosef, we have a Bryce of Yosef to support this. Tirasu Paras. So indeed we see that Paras, Persia, which is Tiras, were descendants of Yefes, and the Persians who initiated the building of the second Beis Hamikdash were grandchildren of Yefes. So he was zeicha to have a chelik in the second Beis Hamikdash, Yafta lekim leyefes. But the true Hashras HaShechina only was experienced during the first Beis Hamikdash, which was built by Shlomo HaMelech, a descendant of Shem. The pasuk here will give us a list of towns built by these actually the children. Bnei Cush, who was a son of Cham. So these are his children, and the towns that it seems were named after these children. Savta, Verama, Vesavtecha. So you have two similar sounding names, Savta and Savtecha, and the Gemara says they were actually close to each other. Tani Rav Yosef, Sekistan Gav Yaisa. There was an interior Sekistan, and was surrounded by a different Sekistan, but Baraisa, the outer Sekistan. So these are two towns. Ben Chada Lechada, between one and the other is Meya Parsi. There was a distance of 100 Parsi. Parsi is 4 mil, around 4 miles. So there's around 400 miles between them. But Keifa Alpha Parsi, in the outer circle, the circumference around the outer Sekistan, was 1,000 Parsa. So one of these Savta, and the other one is Savtecha. One was the outer one, was the inner one. And these were two towns, two areas established by the children of Cush. The pasuk here continues and describes Nimrod's kingdom. Where did he establish his malchus? So his reign was established in the following places. Vati Reishis Mamlachta, the initiation of his malchus began here. Bavel, Ve'erech, Ve'akad, Ve'kalne, in all these areas. Explains the Gemara, Bavel is Kamashma, exactly as it is. Bavel, the city of Bavel. Actually, there was an area, an Eretz Bavel, but also a city, perhaps the capital of Bavel, which here is referred to as Bavel. And in fact, in the Gemara Brachas, we learned about a bracha one makes when he sees Bavel destroyed is referring to the city, the capital of the land of Bavel, the nation of Bavel, which is also called Bavel, like we have New York State, New York City. So here Bavel means Kimashma, the city of Bavel. Erech, what is that? Ze Orichus, what is Ve'eked, Ze Baskar, Kalno, that's Ze Neufer, Ninfi, all these areas, all these towns where Nimrod initiated his kingdom. The pasuk says, by Dur HaFlaga, there was a fellow named Asher who fled. He disappeared. He didn't want to get involved in Dur HaFlaga. Min ha'aretz ahi yotza Asher. So Asher left the town, and apparently he went out and he established places and towns and cities. Tani of Yosef, Asher is a silik. Asher is actually referring to a silik, so Asher is referring to a person, also to the area that he founded, which is called silik. Vayiven es Ninveh. This fellow went out and he built the following cities: Ninveh, Ves Rechoves Ir, Ves Kolach. Where are these places? Ninveh Kimashmoy, exactly as it is. Ninveh, it's today, I believe, in Iraq. Rechoves Ir, what is that referring to? Zuparas the Meshan, a certain area. What is Kolach referring to? Zuparas the Bursif. And the pasuk says he built Ves Resen, which is Bein Ninveh, between the town of Ninveh and Bein Kolach and Kolach. So between those two areas, and the pasuk includes he Ha'ir Agdola, that's the large city. Explains the Gemara. Resen, that's referring to Ze'ak Tisva. And the pasuk includes he Ha'ir Agdola. So Resen was between Ninveh and Kolach, which was the big city. What is this referring to? The large city is either Ninveh or Resen. Right? We said Resen is between Ninveh and Kolach. That is the great city. Which one? Ninveh or Resen? Any idea in Ninveh ha'ir agdola, whether ir agdola is a reference to Ninveh, im Resen ha'ir agdola, or ha'ir agdola is referring to Resen. Kishu Omer, we'll have a raya from elsewhere. A story with Yonah. He was supposed to go to Ninveh, he escaped to Tarshish, and the pasuk says, Kishu Omer v'Ninveh hoisa ir gedola delekim, was a large city before Hashem, mahalach shlishis yamim. It would take 3 days to walk through it. Have you Omer? This proves to us that Ninveh, he Ir Agdola, that's actually the Ir Agdola referred to in this pasuk. Continues the Gemara, we're speaking about names of towns and people. Let's proceed to a related topic. We know the Meraglim came to Eretz Yisrael, they came to Kiryas Arba, actually Yeshua came to Kiryas Arba, and he encountered the giant, Visham, Achiman, Sheshai, V'Talma, Yelidi, Anak. These three fellows were children of Anak the giant. Let's go through their names. Tana, Achiman, he was called that way because he was Meyuman Shaba'achim, the one that was the strongest one amongst the brothers. Just like the right hand, the strongest hand. Achiman is the Meyuman, the right one, the strongest from amongst his brothers. The next one was called Sheshai. Shemeisim as the earth keshchises. When he would walk, he would destroy the land on which he trotted. So Sheshai means he destroys. Talmai is because Shemeisim as the earth Talomim. When he walked on the earth, he would turn into furrows, into ditches. He would absolutely destroy the land that he would walk on. Continues the Gemara. We skip the words of Acher. Achiman Bona Anas, he built the town of Anas. Shesha, the other fellow, Bona Alush. And the third fellow, Talmai Bona Talvush. The pasuk describes them as Yelidi Ha'anak. Why? They were so tall that they would actually appear as though they were protruding through the sun, and the sun formed a necklace around their necks. Shema'aniken ha'chama v'keimasan. An anak is like a necklace, a choker. The sun, the chama, would appear like a necklace around their necks due to their great height. Continues the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Yehuda ben Levi, Amar Rabbi, Asida Roimi, Shetipo Biyad Paras. We discussed the Persians, Paras, descendants of Yefes. Says Rabbi, La'asad Lavoi, before Mashiach, Rome, which was a world power, and actually, they took us into Galus, they destroyed the Beis HaMikdash, and we are still under their hold, under their grip. Although the Ramban has a whole discussion regarding Yishmael. Evan Ezra described Yishmael as being the world power at the end of days, but the Ramban disagrees. He says there were only 4 Goliaths: Mitzrayim, Bavel, Madai, and Edom. Rome, which represents Edom. Our final Goliath is exclusively in the hands of Edom. Now, although he says the Ishmaelim at that time really were a world power, we had the Turkish Empire dominating the world, but he says The fact is, our Golus was initiated by Edom, by Rome, who destroyed the Beis Hamikdash, and therefore anything that happens throughout this final period before Mashiach is related to Rome, to Edom, and it's called Golus Edom. In any case, the Gemara here has a chiddush that Rome will fall into the hands of Paras, Persia, perhaps the Muslims, which are represented by Iran, Persia, which is the power, the most powerful amongst the Muslim nations. So Rome will actually fall into the hands of Paras. Persia will dominate the world at the end of days. Now, interesting to note that the Gemara of the Zohar, of Beis and Beis, says that these two powers, Paras and Edom, will actually be in power at the end of days until Mashiach. The Gemara says, Mahanach, these two, Paras and Edom, Mashchi b'malchusayu, their kingdom, their power will stretch and extend ad Asi Mashiach, until Mashiach. As we see today, we have the two competing powers in the world. We have the Muslim countries, represented by Paras, by Persia, which is the strongest amongst them, and we have, on the other hand, we have Western culture, which is basically representing Rome and Edom. Rome today is meaningless, but the power of Edom, power of Esav, which destroyed the Beis Hamikdash and took us into Golus, is still in power, and represented perhaps by America, which is the sole superpower today. Western culture, that is Golus Edom, that is Malchus Roimi, because all of the actual nations were mixed up and destroyed, but the power still exists. The Sarim up in Shemaim are still there. Every nation has a Sar. And we're still under the Malchus, under the Golus of Rome, of Edom, represented by whoever is in power today in the western side of things, whether it's Russia, America. In any case, that's the power of Rome, and is opposed by the power of Paras on the other side of the globe, the Arabs and the Muslims, represented by Persia and Iran today, which is leading this constant tug of war between, back and forth between America and the Muslims, whether it's the nuclear issue around today, etc. So it's that tug of war, that battle between Paras and Edom, and that will last until Mashiach. Now, interesting, Tosfos there asks, what about the Gemara in YOMA, which tells us that whether Rome will fall into the hands of Paras, or we're going to see soon Paras in the hands of Rome, depending on the various shittas in the Gemara. Apparently, they both won't be present at the end of days. He says, it means up until close to Mashiach, but at the end of days, right before Mashiach, some change will occur. Either one will fall into the hands of the other, depending on the shittas here. Rebbe maintains that it's going to be Rome falling into the hands of Paras, which will be the stronger power and dominate the world at the end of days. So we'll see how it unfolds. Either Rome falling in the hands of Paras, according to Rebbe. Interesting that that in Tanakh we find in Sefer Yeshaya, I believe it's in Perek Chavtes or Lamed, the way the Mefarshim explain the psukim there. It's a frightening allusion. It's alluding to the war, the battle, the huge war that's going to take place between Rome, Malchus Edom, Western civilization, and Paras, Persia, perhaps the Muslim nations in the Middle East. So that's described in Tanakh, and in fact, at the end of days, says Rebbe, it's going to be Rome falling biyad Paras. How do we know this? Shenemar. Lochin shimu atzas Hashem asher yoatz al Edom machshavoisav asher choshav al yeshet teimon. This is the pasuk in Yirmiyah, describing Hashem's foretelling what's going to happen on Edom. Im lo yischavum tziri atzayin. Im lo yosam aleim noim. Describing the tziri atzayin, the youngsters amongst the tzayin, the light animals which aren't so prominent. They're going to dominate and control Edom. And according to Rebbe, it's going to be Paras controlling Edom. How do you know it's referring to Persia? How do you know it's referring to Persia? Because the pasuk describing the chaloim of Daniel, depicting the four Goliaths, has a picture of an idol, a ram with his horns, and is referring to Malchi Madaya Paras. So we see that Persia is some type of light animal, a ram. So Syria Tzoyin is referring to Paras. How do you know? Vema Yavan. Maybe it's referring to Greece, the power of Greece, of Yavan, which will take over Rome. Tichsiv Atzfir Hasor Melech Yavin, we find that the king of Yavin is also described as some sort of sire, a goat. So maybe that is what the previous pasuk is alluding to. It's going to be Yavin controlling Rome. So that was a kasha on Rebbe's shita. Says the Gemara, Kisolik Rav Chaviva Bar Surmaki. When Chaviva went up to Eretz Yisrael, Omra Kamei Dewan Rabbanon. He presented this kasha on Rebbe in front of this Talmud Chacham there, this Rabbanon. Omar Lei, this Rabbanon responded, he said, that's not a question. Man de la yoda pirushi kroi. A fellow who doesn't understand how to interpret psukim, Moisa Tiyuta Rebbe, is going to ask a kasha on Rebbe? How do we know Tziriat Tzoin is referring to Paras? I'll tell you, very simple. My Tziriat Tzoin, Zutru Dachui. Tziriat Tzoin, the youngest one amongst the Tzoin, the youngest amongst the brothers. We had a list of the children of Yefes earlier in the Gemara. And who's the last on the list? Who's the youngest? Tiras. The Tanir of Yosef, Tiras and Paras. Tiras is Paras. So Persia is the youngest. Tziriat Tzoin, the youngest amongst the Tzoin, he will dominate. He will control and overtake Rome. He as well held that Rome will fall into the hands of Paras. Asida Roimi Shetipo Biat Paras. And he's going to apply a svar, a kavachim. Kavachim Uma Migdash Rishon Shebanu B'nei Shem. Since we find that the first Beis HaMikdash, which was built by who? The descendants of Shem, Shlomo Melech. V'echrivu Kasdim. Who destroyed the Beis HaMikdash? The Kasdim. What happened? What was their fitting end? Naflu Kasdim biad Parsim. The Kasdim who destroyed the Beis HaMikdash, they fell in battle to the Parsim. They were overtaken by the Persians as a fitting retribution to them destroying the Beis HaMikdash. So you see that Parsim, they're in charge of meting out punishment to the destroyers of the Beis HaMikdash. Therefore, says the Gemara, certainly Migdash Sheni, the second Beis HaMikdash, which was built by whom? Shebnu Parsim, they were the ones who built it. They initiated the building, the Persians. V'chirvu Barimim, and who destroyed the second Beis HaMikdash? The Romans. Einadin, certainly, we should say, of course, Sheyiplu Roimim biad Parsim, the Romans who destroyed, should fall into the hands of the Persians who built the Beis HaMikdash. The Parsim punished the Kasdim for destroying the first Beis HaMikdash, which they themselves didn't build. Certainly they'll be granted permission to destroy, annihilate the Romans, or at least control the Romans, who destroyed the Beis HaMikdash Hasheni, which they, the Persians, themselves built. So certainly it's a fitting punishment, a fitting retribution, and it's put into their hands. So according to this opinion, it's going to be Paras, Persia, which is going to become a world power at the end of days. Now we have an opposing sheet. Amarav, Asida Paras, Shetibil Biadrimi. It's actually going to be Persia, which is going to become subjugated to Rome. Rome will overtake the world. The Western powers will dominate the world. Amar le Rav Kahana, Rav Asi Rav. So Rav Kahana and Rav Asi challenged Rav. How can you suggest that Rome will take over the world? Will overtake Persia? Benuye biat Sesuri. The builders of the Beis HaMikdash, the Persians, will be given into the hands of the destroyers, the Romans. How is that? How does that make sense? Omar Lui responded to them yes, certainly, Gzeiras Melchi. It's Hashem's decree that the Persians, although they built the Beis HaMikdash, they should be overtaken by the Romans who destroyed the Beis HaMikdash. And perhaps the Pshat is, Hashem is indicating to us and to everybody. Gzeiras Melech, everything is run by Hashem. It's not that the Persians built and the Romans destroyed. They were merely serving as instruments in the hands of Hashem, tools to build and destroy the Beis HaMikdash. And this takes away their chashivas. The fact that the Persians are given into the hands of the Romans shows that the Romans themselves didn't destroy anything. It was just Hashem sending them to destroy the Beis HaMikdash. So was the kasha. How can the builders be given into the hands of the destroyers? These aren't builders, these aren't destroyers. They're just instruments in the hands of Hashem. And this demonstrates to all that Hashem destroyed the Beis HaMikdash. These powers, these world powers, these so-called superpowers, they have no inherent power. It's all in the hands of Hashem. Igad Amri, Omerlu is another version of Rav's response to them. How come I say that Paras will fall into the hands of Rome? How does that work? Paras built the Beis HaMikdash. Rome destroyed. Inu Nami, the Persians as well are guilty of destruction. Hakasasri Beknishta, they destroy shuls. We know throughout Golas, the shul is a Migdash Ma'at. It's sort of a mini Beis HaMikdash. So they're also guilty. The Persians are also guilty of destroying something which is connected to Beis HaMikdash. And therefore they also have to suffer as a result. They're punished, they're destroyed by the Romans, and of course eventually the Romans will be overtaken by Mashiach, and that will be their einish for destroying the Beis HaMikdash. Tanya Mehach, we have a brayso in support of this shita. Asi the Paras. Shetipu biadroimi, Paras will fall into the hands of Rome. Chada, one reason would be the Sasri Beknishta, because the Persians destroy shuls. Va'oid, another reason, Xeris Melech, who it's a decree of Hashem. Sheyiplu boinen biatzeisin, the builders, the Persians, should be dominated by the destroyers, the Romans. The Amar Avidam Rav. In fact, we have another memra, Rabbi Yehuda, the name of Rav. Ein bedavid ba. Moshiach will not come until Ad shetifshoit Malchus Roimi Harisha b'chala'il kuloi. Malchus Roimi, the Rishayim, the Lashon Risha, is always connected, related to a kingdom who was involved in destroying, like Malchus Yavan Harisha, Malchus Roimi Harisha, destroying the Beis HaMikdash. Until this Malchus will overtake the world completely, will extend its reign throughout the entire world. Tisha Chadashim for 9 months. That's going to be the last phase before Mashiach. They have to completely take over the world. We're in Golus Roimi. They have to complete their reign, complete their Malchus, so that Rashi in Sanhedrin actually explains, because we have to get all of Klal Yisrael under the Malchus Yisrael all over the world. So until Malchus Roimi is nifshat, is nespashad b'chalem kuloi, the last phase of Golus was not really fulfilled and reached. How do we know it's for 9 months? Shnemar l'chein yitneim ad eis yeleda yolada v'yeser echav yeshuvan al bnei Yisrael. So we see that the concept of Leda, which is a 9-month experience, will have to apply then. Rome will overtake the world for 9 months, become a superpower, dominate the world for 9 months. And that 9-month period is a transition period which will enable the world for the Geula, for Mashiach, which will follow this development. Okay, so to summarize, we had the first Beis HaMikdash, which was built by Shlomo Melech, a descendant of Shem, which was Zoicha to have a higher level of Shechina. The Shem Hashem is Yishkoin Be'olei Shem, and the oil that was built by the descendant of Shem, which was Shlomo Melech. The second Beis HaMikdash was initiated by the Persians, which were descendants of Yefes. They got some schus, Yafta L'kim Yefes. They have beauty, they have chitzonius. They built a Beis HaMikdash, but in the previous it was still lacking. It didn't have the same madrega b'ashras hashchina. The Gemara concluded l'asad lavai. Although Paras and Edom are both malchuyos, which will run close to the finish line until Mashiach, but at the very end of the days, there'll be a power struggle, a tug of war between the Persians and the Romans, the Western powers, the Malchus Edom. Which one will prevail? At Machlekes, according to Rebbe, it's going to be Paras, and then Mashiach will come. According to Rav, it's going to be Rome spreading out throughout the world, taking over the world, at least for this 9-month period, which is going to be the last development before Mashiach. Tana Rabban, let's go back to the Mishnah, which tells us that Kohen Gadol went through a stage called Prisha 7 days before Yom Kippur, throughout which he dwelled in a lishko called Lishkas Palhedron, or Parhedron. Tana Rabban, called Lishkos Shayva Migdash, all the rooms in the Beis HaMikdash, even ones used by guards and Shomrim, Lo Yehoyah Mezuzah, did not have a mezuzah. It wasn't really considered a place of dwelling, except for one. Chutz Milishkas Parhedron Shahaya Ba Beis Dirul Kohen Gadol. Because in Lishkas Parhedron, that was considered a place of dwelling. The Kohen Gadol dwelled there. It was a makam dira, a proper place of dwelling, proper place of residence, in which case it required a mezuzah. Oh, Rabbi Yehuda, that's not the case. A mezuzah, it's not chayav a mezuzah min HaTorah. There were many rooms in the Beis Hamikdash, shoyel and Beis Dira, which were considered places of residence. For instance, for the Shomrim, still didn't have a mezuzah. Apparently, it's not considered a proper Beis Dira. It doesn't need a mezuzah. What then? Ela lishkas parhedrin gzera hisa. Rabbi Yehuda holds min HaTorah, even lishkas parhedrin was pater from mezuzah. It was the gzera of the Rabbana. We're going to see soon in the Gemara. Chacham didn't want it to appear as though it's a prison. And so it's a jail locking the Kohen Gadol for Yom Kippur. So they applied a mezuzah to that room to make it appear like a ordinary place of residence. But min HaTorah, according to Rabbi Yehuda, there's no chiv mezuzah throughout the lishkos in the Beis Hamikdash. My time at Rabbi Yehuda, what's Rabbi Yehuda's reason? Why not? Kohen Gadol would live there for 7 days. The Shomrim would dwell in those watchtowers, at least throughout the nights. So why was there no mezuzah? Amar Rabba Kusav Rabbi Yehuda, Kol bayis sheni osur limoisacham, v'limoisachsham. Any house which is not for all year-round use, for yimoisacham and yimoisachshamim, for summer and winter, any bayis, it doesn't constitute a proper bayis. It's not considered a proper place of dwelling. Lishkas Paredrin was a 7-day use. It wasn't for all year round. The watchtowers were for nightly use. It wasn't for all day, all year use. How can you say that only a partial, only a part-time residence is not considered a bias? The passage is describing the misfortunes which will befall the Rishonim. I'll strike their winter homes, their summer homes. We see even a winter or summer home is considered a bias. So even partial residency is considered. Amalei Rabbi responded, bias choyrif ikri. Yeah, it's called a winter home. Ubayis kaitz ikri, or a summer home. So together with that description, yeah, but bias stama, what ikri. When we use the word bias, like by mezuzah, uchsavtam al mezuzah secha. Stam, the word bias, is describing a place of residence which is intended for all day, all year use, as opposed to Lishkas Parhedrin or the other rooms in the Beis Hamikdash. Eisvi Abai says, Abai, I'll ask you a kasha. Sukkah Sachag B'chag. What about the Sukkah of Sukkahs, B'chag on Sukkahs itself? Is a mezuzah required? Rabbi Yehuda Mechayiv. He's Mechayiv a mezuzah. He says even a Sukkah on Sukkahs, even though it's for 7-day use, a mezuzah is affixed on that door. Chacham say no, there's no mezuzah. V'tanila, we learned in a brisa to explain this. Rabbi Yehuda Mechayiv, he says even a temporary sukkah is chayiv in the following 3 things: be'eruv, ube-mezuzah, ube-maser. Let's take a look at Rashi. 9 lines from the bottom. Says Rashi, Rabbi Yehuda Mechayiv, when it comes to 3 things: maser, eruv, mezuzah. Linin maser, what does that mean? The kaimlan we learned. Eina tevel mischayiv maser melechel meno achilas harai. When produce is introduced to the home, that changes its status. Up until then, you can have a temporary snack, achilas harai, without addressing the true and master obligations. But once it enters their home, now it's been designated for domestic use. Now it assumes a new status. It's meant for personal consumption, and it's completely chayv and maser. You can't even have a temporary snack from it until you separate trumas and maser. Rabbi Yehuda maintains even a sukkah on sukkahs is considered. It's considered like a bias. Anything brought into that sukkah is now chayv and maser. Shenamar bi'arti hakodesh min habayis. We see that the bias establishes the chiv. Be'eruv, a sukkah is chayv and eruv. In psucha l'chotzer sheyesh b'ch shar diras. If it's open to a courtyard which is shared by other residencies, oiseres al kulam imloy irva imam. This sukkah will make it usher on all them to carry in that joint area unless he contributes to the eruv. The eruv chatzeres is considered a place of residence. And finally, uba mezuzah. A sukkah is chayv mezuzah. Va'af agav de'ena asuya u'meisachama u'meisachshamim. Sukkah is certainly not intended for summer and winter use. It's not even waterproof. It's intended for a 7-day use. So why is it chayv mezuzah according to Rabbi Yehuda? And if sukkah is chayv mezuzah, why not lishkas parhedrin, which was also for temporary use? Perhaps you'll suggest it's only chayiv midrabanan. In Torah, this temporary residence is not chayiv mezuzah. Sukkah is on sukkah. It's chayiv in Torah midrabanan for some reason. Bishlam erev mezuzah. Certainly erev and mezuzah can work. Equally midrabanan. We can say that's only chayiv midrabanan. That's to contribute to erev chatzeres midrabanan. You have to put on a mezuzah midrabanan. Perhaps because it appears like a proper dwelling. Elama'asam equally midrabanan. How could you say that it's chayiv and masam d'rabbanan? Produce brought into the sukkah is chayiv and d'rabbanan. The chayiv to take off truma masam d'rabbanan. That won't work because it can lead to confusion. Dilma asila frushe menachil aptur menachil achiv. Perhaps this fellow will think that the wheat brought into the sukkah is chayiv minat Torah. He won't realize it's only d'rabbanan. He'll say this is a proper dwelling. It's chayiv minat Torah. Now, what if he has another pile of tvua, which is really tevel min haTorah, it's brought into a proper home? He'll say, well, okay, I have to do truma and maser from both these piles. I'll take from this pile, the one brought into the sukkah, and be mighty the other one. But really, min haTorah, this one's potter, that was chayiv. In which case, the truma and maser doesn't really work for the other one, which is chayiv min haTorah. So this proposition can create confusion. He might be mafresh min achiv l'aptur, l'aptur l'achiv. He'll think they're both chayiv, and he'll go confuse matters. So you cannot say that this thing is chayiv b'maaseh midrabanan, which will lead to pitfall. Now Tosfos asks an obvious kasha. We find many times throughout Shas there is a chiyuv of truma maaseh midrabanan. Why is it just over here we're so concerned? We don't want to allow that. So Tosfos here it's different because he'll think that this sukkah is a proper place of dwelling. It's a proper bayis, a makom dira, which is a mechayiv in Torah. Why should he think otherwise? Because he sees the chachamim telling him it's chayiv and maser on account of bringing it into the sukkah. He'll say, well, because it's a proper dira. And over here, there's more room for confusion. Therefore, the Gemara says it can't work. You can't say Rabbi Yehuda is mechayiv, a sukkah, b'mezuzah, b'erev, and b'maser, and it's only referring to midrabanan, because maser cannot be established in midrabanan in this case. It can only lead to confusion. Apparently, he's speaking minat Torah. And a sukkah is chayiv in all three things minat, erev chaser is only midrabanan, but mezuzah and maser is minat Torah. If it's minat Torah, so why is there a machlokes regarding lishkas parhedrin? Both sukkah and lishkas parhedrin were intended for temporary use. If sukkah is chayiv and mezuzah min haTorah, why is Rabbi Yehuda disagreeing to Chachamim, who said that lishkas parhedrin had a mezuzah, and he responded and said, no, there's no mezuzah requirement. Why not? Why would it be different than sukkah, which has a chayiv mezuzah min haTorah on account of it being at least a temporary dwelling? Elam Rabbi says Abaye, apparently even a part-time residence is considered. B'shiva, throughout those 7 days, which the Kohen Gadol is living in the Lishkas Parhedrin, Dukuli Almoloi Pligi the Machai, all agree there's a Chiv Mezuzah. When then is there machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabban? Ki Pligi b'Shai Mas Hashanah. It's only a machlokes regarding the rest of the year. Rabban Savri Gazrinon, Shai Mas Hashanah, Atu Shiva. Chacham say, there's a gzeira. We want to apply a mezuzah throughout the rest of the year, even though there's nobody living there throughout the year. Atu Shiva, on account of the 7 days, because if there won't be a mezuzah throughout the year, then perhaps they'll neglect to put a mezuzah on through those 7 days as well. Therefore, they say, be consistent, have a mezuzah on the Lishkas Parhedrin throughout the year. Rabbi Yehuda Savalai Gazrinon, he says there's also Zera. Yeah, throughout the 7 days, there's a Chiv Mezuzah Min HaTorah. It's a place of Dira, place of residence for the Kohen Gadol. But throughout the rest of the year, skip the Mezuzah. As we find that there was never a mezuzah throughout the Beis HaMikdash, throughout the other lishakas, throughout the other rooms. There's no gzera, one on account of the other. Just as we don't find mezuzahs throughout the other rooms, Lishkas Parhedron as well did not need a mezuzah. It's only throughout those 7-day Yimei Prisha, which were considered as mandira for the Kohen Gadol, in which case this place is a place of residency for the Kohen Gadol, and mezuzah is required. That's Abai's opinion. So when it comes to the 7-day period, all agree. Even a part-time dira is considered. So at least through those 7 days, a mezuzah is required min HaTorah, according to all shittas, Rabbi Yehuda and Rabban. Amalei Rava responds to Abai, how can you say that? How can you suggest that there's no machlokes regarding that 7-day period? All agree that chiv mezuzah min HaTorah? What about sukkahs? V'sukkahs b'chag ketani. The Brisa here tells us that the sukkah of Yom Tov, on Yom Tov, according to Rabbi Yehuda, is chayv mezuzah. According to Rabban, is pater from mezuzah. Apparently, even throughout the actual time of residency, when the person is actually dwelling in that structure, there's a machlokes. Rabbi Yehuda says, there's a chiv mezuzah. Chachamim exempt him from mezuzah. How could Abaye say that when this fellow was living in there, all agreed there's a chiv mezuzah? By Sukkah we find it to be not so. Even on Sukkot, Rabbi Yehuda is mechayev mezuzah, Chachamim not. Apparently we have to approach the whole discussion differently. Elam Arava have a different pshat. B'shayim Eis Hashana, Kul Amalei Pligi de P'tura. When it comes to the rest of the year, all agree that Lishkas Parhedron does not have a mezuzah. The same thing regarding a sukkah on sukkahs. It's only perhaps on sukkahs that it needs a mezuzah, but not throughout the rest of the year. So again, regarding Lishkas Parhedron, throughout the year, all agree there's no chiv mezuzah, even with Rabbanan. Ki pligi b'shiva. The question is, during the dwelling period, 7 days, Yimei Prisha before Yom Kippur, where the Kohen Gadol is actually present in that room and using it. Likewise, a sukkah on sukkahs. On the Yom Tov, when this fellow is actually living in that sukkah, is a chayiv or not? That's the machlokes. Ki pligi b'shiva. And we actually have two separate machlokes. By Lishkas Parhedron, we have the Rabbanan who say there is a chiv mezuzah min HaTorah, whereas the Rabbi Yehuda holds it's not a chiv min HaTorah, as we're going to see soon. And by Sukkah we have another separate machlokes, unrelated. Over there the Rabbanan say there's no chiv mezuzah whatsoever, whereas Rabbi Yehuda maintains there is a chiv mezuzah. Sukkah sachag b'chag chayavas. Rabbi Yehuda is mechayev mezuzah, as more explained. Sukkah time alachud, v'lishka time alachud. Says Rava, throughout the 7-day period before Yom Kippur and the 7-day period of Sukkot, that's going to be the machlokes. V'sukkah tam alachud, v'lishka tam alachud. By Sukkah we have a separate reason, and by Lishkas Parhedron we have a separate reason. Sukkah tam alachud, the reason by Sukkah is as follows. Rabbi Yehuda holds there's a chiv mezuzah. You know why? Because there's machlokes in the Gemara Sukkah. How to treat a sukkah. How large a sukkah can one build? Rabbi Yehuda says a sukkah is considered a diras kava, a permanent dwelling. It's so chashav, it's a real place of dwelling. It's not just meant to be a temporary dwelling in and out. We want the sukkah to have an appearance of permanence to it. It's considered a real true makom dira, a diras kava. In fact, Rabbi Yehuda says you can build it as high as you want. You can make it into a real permanent structure, even more than 20 amma high. Because the very essence of a sukkah is diras kva, it's a permanent dwelling. Established by Hashem, by the Torah, for use of sukkahs. Whereas Rabbanan maintain, you can't build it too high, because a sukkah is only a temporary structure. Hashem wants it to be a temporary structure. Leave your home, leave your permanence, and go out into a temporary dira, into a sukkah which is just meant to be like this hut. You can't build it too high. If you build it too high up, it appears like a permanent structure. That's not kosher for sukkah. So this is the discussion in Masechah Sukkah. What is a sukkah? Diras arai, temporary dwelling, or diras kva, a permanent dwelling? Rabbi Yehuda maintains diras kva. That explains why you need to have a mezuzah. It's a dwelling of permanent. It's a perfect bias. It's a perfect dira. A mezuzah is required. The Rabbanan maintain no. Sukkah is diras arai. It's a temporary makam dira and does not earn a mezuzah. That's one discussion. It says about sukkah tam lechud. The reason by sukkah is independent of the reason by bishkas parhedron. The reason is as follows. Rabbi Yehuda is following his shita. The Amar Sukkah diras kvabin needs to be a permanent structure, a permanent dwelling. Umachayva b'mezuzah, and that's why it's chayva mezuzah. Rabban Tamai, the Rabban are following their shita. The Amri Sukkah diras arai binan, just the opposite. A sukkah is just a temporary dwelling. V'loy mechayva b'mezuzah. That's why it's not chayva mezuzah. Says Rashi off to the left. Ki pligi b'shiva. The machlekes between Rabbi and Rabban refers to the 7 days of use. Bein belishka, whether regarding lishkas parhedron, bein besukah, va'poiter kan, machayev kan, v'chlifa devreim. Actually, it's interesting that the one that exempts by lishkas parhedron, which is Rabbi Yehuda, will be machayev mezuzah, and the Rabbanon vice versa, because really it's unrelated, two separate contexts. V'sukkah tam lechud continues Rashi. Rabbi Yehuda tamei, the Amar b'sechas sukkah, diras kvahi. Sukkah is meant to be a permanent dwelling, and that's why he's machshir. Even a very tall structure. Even taller than 20 am. A tall structure which cannot be built without using good material. Permanent, material of permanence. So since Rabbi Yehuda considers it a diras kva, hilkach bayis chashiv v'namalina mezuzah. Therefore, regarding mezuzah as well, he considers it a bias. But the Rabban will say, don't make it too high. Because in order to make something really tall, you have to use mechitzas kvum, you have to use solid, permanent walls. So this sukkah, which is higher than 20 amma, the dimensions appear like a diras kva, give it the appearance of a permanent dwelling, therefore it's possible for sukkah. Likewise, they hold, there's no mezuzah on a sukkah, which is merely a diras harai. So that explains the machlokes on mezuzah. What about the machlokes by lishkas parhedron? Where the Rabbanan began the sugi by saying, lishkas parhedron needs a mezuzah min ha-Torah. Why? Was the makam dira of the kohen gadol? Rabbi Yehuda responds by saying, no, it's not chiv min ha-Torah. Maybe the Rabbanan is a gzera, but not min ha-Torah. What's the pshat in that machlokes? Says more, but lishka tam lechud. The reason by lishka is a different reason. Rabbanan savra dira bal korcha shma dira. They hold that a dira against the person's will is considered. Lishkas parhedron was a place where the kohen gadol would come, separate from his family, and he was there to attain madrega of kedusha. He was there as a means to achieve a goal. It wasn't for its own sake. So this dira, this place of dwelling, wasn't meant to serve a dira for its own sake. It wasn't an end on its own. It was just a means to achieve something, to prepare him for the avodah beis hamikdash. It's called dira ba'al korcha. It's against his will. He's there because he has to be there. I mean, he's happy to be there. But it's only there as a means to achieve something greater. Still, the Rabbanan hold, dira ba'al korcha shma dira. At the end of the day, it's a properly built structure. It's a proper makam dira. And therefore, a mezuzah is required. It's not a diras arai, like a sukkah. It's a diras kva. It's a permanent structure. Although it's not intended for its own sake, it's intended as a means to achieve something greater, that's still considered a dira, and that's chayv mezuzah. Min ha-Torah. Throughout that 7-day period, in which case it was serving the kohen gadol for his as his place of dira. Rabbi Yehuda Savar, he says no. Dira ba'al karcha lo yishma dira. When a person is sitting in a place which is intended for a dira ba'al karcha, to keep the kohen gadol away from his family, to prepare him for the Yom Kippur service, that's considered a ba'al karcha against his will. It's not a place which you come to enjoy the place for its own sake. Therefore, min ha-Torah, that's not called a proper bias, and no mezuzah is required. However, midrabanan, says Rabbi Yehuda, I'll agree, there's a mezuzah there. Why? People shouldn't say, look, kohen gadol chavish v'es hasurim, kohen gadol is locked in prison. It doesn't send a good message. to have him locked in prison against his will. So we place a mezuzah on that door to give it the look, the impression of a ordinary Makam Dira. Let's take a look at Tosfos here on the bottom line. Only on the bottom line, he says, V'yesh bedover gnai. It gives the wrong impression. It looks like he's locked in a prison. It's a gnai. It's a biza mitzvah. V'nira kila kadosh baruch hu matriach al Yisrael v'choshim b'sasurim. So referring to sukkah there, but the same thing applies to the lishkas farhedin for the Kohen Gadol. It looks like he's locked in prison. It looks like Hashem is burdening the Kohen Gadol, locking him up in a place that doesn't have a mezuzah. It's not a proper makam dira. Therefore, we place a mezuzah on the door to avoid that negative impression. That's Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. In our Torah, there's no mezuzah. It's a dir bal karcha. It's only with the Rabbanon we apply a mezuzah. Says the Gemara, Man tan Rabbanon. Whose opinion is reflected in the following brayso? Kol ha'sharim sha'yu sham, all the gateways in Beis HaMikdash. Lo yehoylem mezuzah. They didn't have a mezuzah because they were not leading into a place of dira. Chutz mishar nikner, except for Shar Nikner on the east of the Azora, shelifnim imenu lishkas parhedrin. Because inside of that Shar Nikner was lishkas parhedrin, where the Kohen Gadol resided throughout his 7 Yemei Prisha, and that place required a mezuzah, as we just explained. And therefore the shar leading into that place likewise was considered a shar leading into a makam dira and needs a mezuzah. Who is the shita? Le'mer Rabbanon, le Rabbi Yehuda. Perhaps it's Rabbanon, not Rabbi Yehuda, because Rabbanon say that even the lishkas parhedrin was chayiv and mezuzah min Torah, despite the fact that it was dira bal karcha. We look at the fact that a person is living in there for 7 days. The actual dwelling, the use, gives it chashivas, and it's chayiv and mezuzah. And therefore the shar leading into that area is also chayiv and mezuzah. Since the lishkas parhedrin was chayiv mezuzah min Torah, the shar as well. But according to Rabbi Yehuda, the Rabbi Yehuda, if this price is Rabbi Yehuda, it wouldn't work. Because remember, Rabbi Yehuda holds that since the lishkas parhedrin, by its very essence, was not meant for a proper dir. It was only lishka bal karcha, only dir bal karcha. It's only chayiv mezuzah midrabanan because we want to avoid that impression of a prison. So since that room was only chayiv midrabanan, he guf gzer. If the room itself was only chayiv midrabanan, va'anan neku v'nigzer gzer, we'll apply a double gzer to that. We'll say not only is the room itself chayiv mezuzah, but also the shar, the gateway leading into that room. That's already a bit of a stretch. Says, well, yeah. This brayso, which requires a mezuzah on the Shar Nikner, in front of the lishkas parhedrin, could be following even Rabbi Yehuda's sheet. Hafilu teim Rabbi Yehuda could be following even Rabbi Yehuda. Kula chad gzeri. It's all one and the same takana. Chachamim applied a mezuzah to the lishkas parhedrin to give it the right appearance of a proper makom dira, and at the same time they put a mezuzah on the shar leading into that area for the same reason, to give the entire area an appearance of a proper makom dira. So in conclusion, we have 2 separate discussions. One regarding sukkah. The question is whether it's a diras arai or diras kva. According to Chachamim, it's a temporary dwelling, the diras arai, and there's no mezuzah. According to Rabbi Yehuda, sukkah, Hashem gives it a chashivas. Hashem ups its status. It's considered diras kva, even though it's only for 7 days. It's considered a dwelling of permanence, and it's chayiv mezuzah. But lishkas parhedrin, we had a machlokes. According to the Rabbanon, it's chayiv and mezuzah min Torah. The fact is, it's intended for a dwelling. So throughout the 7 Yemei Prisha, a mezuzah was required min Torah. According to Rabbi Yehuda, it's a dir bal karcha. The place was built in preparation for Yom Kippur, to prepare the Kohen Gadol for his kedusha. It wasn't meant really for its own sake as an end, just as a means to achieve the end goal of kedusha of Yom Kippur. It's a dir bal karcha. And it's not chayiv mezuzah min Torah. Midrabanan, a mezuzah was affixed, so that people wouldn't say, look, the Kohen Gadol is locked in prison. We want to give it the appearance of a proper makam dira. And likewise, the shar leading into that area of the Beis HaMikdash required a mezuzah as well. Okay, time for a brief chazara. The first Beis HaMikdash was built by Shlomo HaMelech, a descendant of Shem, and therefore was zoichet to a higher level of Ashras HaShechina, whereas the second Beis HaMikdash, which was initiated by the children of Yefes, although they were given a schus to get involved in building Beis HaMikdash, Yaft Elokim Liyefes. But Yaft denotes beauty, the chitzonius beauty. It was lacking in its essence, in its primus, in its internal beauty. It didn't have the same level of Ashras HaShechim. We went through many names of towns, of people, of giants, and finally we discussed the two dominant forces in Golos before Mashiach, Malchus Roimi, Rome, Edom, descendants of Esav, and the competing force, which we call Paras, Persia, which represents the competing power, the competing Kayach, perhaps it's the Muslims, the Bnei Yishmael, which are represented by Paras, Persia, which is Iran of today. Which one would fall in the hands of who? According to Rebbe, Rome will fall in the hands of Paras. According to Rab, the other way around, Paras in the hands of Rome. And we concluded with a mezuzah discussion by Lishkas Parhedrin and on Sukkot, Machlokes between Yehuda and Rabbanon, and we concluded the two things are unrelated. Machlokes by Lishkas Parhedrin is a question of Lishka Ba'al Karcha, whether to Shema Dira or not. My Sukkah, it's a question of whether Sukkah is Diras Arai or Diras Kavav. Have much haslach and all the best.